So, gotten two responses to yesterday's talk so far. I'll do one today. I don't know if I'll have time for the second one. Okay, but it's somebody, I don't recognize the name, but he asks, he sent this to Facebook. The Dalai Lama, your teacher, advises one to question. So, with due respect, do you not live in a rarefied environment far from the actual hue and cry of suffering humanity? With respect, is it not true that in Siddhartha's day you would have been advised upon completion of training to leave the monastery and help people by living as they live, surviving as they survive, to understand how Dharma directly impacts humanity? Okay, so I'll answer those two questions one by one. So the first one is, don't you live in a rarefied environment far from the actual hue and cry from suffering humanity? No. Okay, for several reasons. One is this community is made up of individuals, and among the individuals here, we have people who have gone through various experiences of suffering. We have people who, one of our nuns is an immigrant from South America who tells us her story of coming here. We have other people here who have been raped, people here who have been sexually abused, people who have faced ethnic, religious, and racial discrimination. So just among the people who live here at the Abbey, people are not far from the hue and cry of suffering humanity. We are all suffering humanity. Also, there's sometimes the mistaken idea that if you live in a monastery, you don't relate to the rest of the world. And that is completely incorrect, at least in terms of Buddhist monastic life. Our teachers teach us right from the get-go that it is impossible not to be in relationship with society and with all of humanity at any given moment, because everything we have, everything we use here, comes due to others' effort. So we try to be aware of, the when we purchase things, where were they made? What was the condition of the people who made what we use? So we are not distant ever from humanity. We don't sit around and pray all day. It isn't a rarefied environment. We're quite an active community. We have to, we're not distinct from society. We have to deal with the government, for our 501c3 status, for our water system, which we're in the middle of doing, for our septic system, for our building permits. We're involved also in our community because the local government wants to build a silicon smelter here, which will completely destroy the beautiful environment and endanger the health of the community where we live. So we're involved in trying to bring some clarity to that issue. And also we have a lot of people who come here, and we go out to teach in various other places. We're always relating to people. And the people who come here have problems, and they tell us their problems. And we try and teach the Dharma, the Buddhist teachings, to help them. We counsel them. The meditation group we lead in Spokane, there's another one in Coeur d'Alene, trying again to help people understand the Buddhist teachings, to alleviate their own present suffering, and to not create suffering for future lives. Also, living together with other people is not a rarefied environment where everything is peaceful. Okay. In fact, when you are a monastic, you live with people that you would not associate with in your ordinary life. Sometimes I think lay people live in the rarefied environment because if you're unhappy at work, you go home, you have a loving family who talks to you and you can do things with. If you have family problems, you can go to the movies, you can go to your work, you can go do other sorts of things to distract you. When you live in a monastery, people have very different ideas and temperaments. We are not cookie cutter personalities, and we do everything together. There's no place to run to get away from each other. So the idea here is that you really have to look at yourself and deal with your own mind and learn how to live with others in harmony. That is not easy. Okay, so I wouldn't say that we live in a rarefied environment. So I'd like to invite the person who sent this email to come here and spend some time with us, and then you'll see what a monastery is like and how things function. You'll get an experience of that. Then the second question was, isn't it true that in Siddhartha's day you would have been advised upon completion of training to leave the monastery and help people by living as they live, surviving as they survive, to understand how Dharma directly impacts humanity? First of all, in Buddhist training, we don't have a period of training that we complete and then we do something else. We are in training from now until we attain full awakening, which probably won't be this life. It may be many lifetimes or eons in advance. Okay? Then at the time of the Buddha, they didn't live in monasteries. They wandered all the time, sleeping in the forest, sleeping in the meadows. It doesn't matter. They did not buy food. They went into the villages with their alms bowl. They did not beg, but they had their bowl, and if people wanted to give them food, they gave. If they didn't, then they went to the next house. They had until noontime to gather their alms. After that, whatever they had, they ate. If they didn't have enough, that was it. So they didn't have a nice, comfy place at the Buddha's time. In fact, I think the life was probably harder on a material level. So they really understood how other people lived because they were living literally hand to mouth. Okay, in subsequent eras, Buddhist monastics came to have monasteries. Okay, but again, our training goes from now until awakening, and we are encouraged at every level of our training, at least at Sravasti Abbey, to engage with the world in a way that remains balanced. Okay, so we are engaged in various social issues and social projects and so on, but not exclusively. We also have our studies, we have our meditation, because the thing is, if you completely engage only in social activities, social welfare activities, it's very easy for your mind to get unbalanced, and pretty soon your mind becomes exactly like everybody else's mind. Liking your friends, hating your enemies, blaming other people for their ideas and their stubbornness and everything else. If you have that kind of mind, then whatever activism you're doing or whatever social welfare project you're engaged in, you're not really creating virtue because the mind is not a virtuous mind. It's an angry, complaining, us versus them mind. And so that's why in our daily schedule, there's regular periods of study and of meditation so that we can maintain an equilibrium and build up more equilibrium because we are not completely equanimous now, but to build up more understanding, more balance in our own lives, so that when we do help people, we don't just, get all crazy about it and start criticizing and praising and playing favorites and all that other kind of stuff. Yeah. So the social welfare is a part of our practice, but we are not encouraged just to go out and do only that. Okay. So I think I answered everything. We are encouraged to help people, yeah, to live as they live. In some ways, we do not live as other people live. For example, we do not buy our own food. Yeah, we rely on people to offer food, to donate food. Yeah, and and that helps us to appreciate people's kindness, to appreciate how hard they work, so that we have food to eat, and it helps us remember that we have an obligation to practice well and to be the servant of others. Okay, so we don't always live the way other people live. Um, we also have regulations about what we can possess. Yeah, we cannot go out and buy something to give ourselves a present because we feel depressed. You know, we can't go out to the movies or go out and meet some friends at the bar to have a good time. Um, we don't live always the way other people live for a good reason, too. Okay? Um, but how Dharma directly impacts humanity, that is definitely part of our practice. And all of our teachings, we try to relate to our own mind, the situations of the people we see around us, the situations of all sentient beings in the world and in the universe. Okay, so I hope that answers this person's questions. And again, I invite them to come here and stay for a week or two and see what monastic life is like. It's not a rarefied environment far away from the suffering of the world.
I wonder what made the person write that email. What in the talk yesterday kind of triggered them?
It was in response to yesterday's talk about taking the children away from the immigrant parents at the border. So I'm not sure exactly how it relates. Maybe he thought we weren't in, I don't know. Yeah, but this was in response to the talk of yesterday.
I think maybe, if I could venture a guess,
Uh-huh.
People think that people who live in environments like the monastery, they're out of touch and they can't possibly understand the suffering of the world. But actually, you have to develop mental strength to truly meet the suffering of the world in an effective way. And when you're out there in your everyday life, you're bombarded by things all day long, your own problems, and you really don't have capacity to look at other people's problems as much as you do, I think, when you have a quieter environment.
Yeah.
That's been my experience.
Yeah, that's also true. Yeah. Sometimes you're so frazzled by your own life that it's hard to take time to think about others' experience. Yeah. Whereas here, actually thinking about others' experience is very much a part of our meditation.